Here comes Old School. This is Old School Queenies Couples Podcast. Oh yeah. And I got a new hot topic for you every week. Yeah. I'm cutting my music down now. I'm coming at you live from my studio. Yeah, my little small apartment studio. And thank you. I want to thank you for tuning in. So as I was speaking earlier, or at another time, that most of my couples relationship type topics is for subscription only. So you have to get an Apple subscription. But sometimes, every now and then here, we got the news that I have to report for free. And I'm going to share my poor people's news to you, to us, for us, and our history for us to learn about what's going on in the world and all around our area and our neighborhood and all like that. So, thank you again for tuning in, and take a listen. Take a listen at the latest. Take a listen at what I captured for you, for us poor people, for us, for all of us to share and learn our history as well. Thank you again. Yeah, this is Old School to your new school.
Why the hell is everyone so afraid to stand up to a man-made system that has no legitimate authority over them? Seriously, sit with that question for more than 5 seconds. This entire structure was built by people, regular human beings, no gods involved, no cosmic mandate, no universal law etched into the fabric of reality. Just men with pens, power, and opinions who decided they should be in charge, and then wrote it down. And somehow, centuries later, people treat those decisions like they're untouchable. The Constitution? Let's stop bullshitting ourselves. It's not some sacred object. It's not a moral compass. It's not a source of truth. It's a list of privileges, permissions that a small group of men decided society would be allowed to exercise as long as it behaved properly. That's the whole thing. It doesn't recognize natural rights. It replaces them with conditions. You're allowed to speak within limits. You're allowed to own things under regulation. You're allowed to move with documentation. You're allowed to defend yourself if the state approves how and when. Every right comes with an asterisk and a footnote written by someone in power. And people still call that freedom. Natural rights don't come from ink and paper. They don't come from votes, courts, or legislative sessions. You don't wake up with freedom because a document allows it. You wake up with freedom because your creator gave it to you and because you're alive. Existence precedes permission. The moment a system claims it can grant rights, it's admitting something else, that it believes it owns the authority to revoke them. And it does, constantly, casually, with paperwork and polite language. Speech gets regulated, property gets seized, movement gets restricted, privacy gets invaded. All perfectly legal, all perfectly justified, all perfectly obedient. And people defend this arrangement like it's mature, civilized, when in reality, it's just normalized submission. And they flinch at the idea of questioning it because they've been trained to associate obedience with stability and dissent with danger. Look at the arrogance baked into that whole thing. A structure built by humans claims jurisdiction over humans. Rules written by dead men govern people who never consented to them. An abstract system made of offices, uniforms, and procedures insists it outranks living, breathing beings. And we're supposed to treat that as reasonable? Voting doesn't solve this because voting happens entirely inside the permission framework. You're not deciding whether the system should exist. You're choosing which manager gets to enforce it. You're picking the referee, but the game stays the same. Different face, same rules, same authority, same leash. And the reason people cling to it isn't because it's just or logical. It's because dependence has been engineered into every layer of life. Food routes through systems. Money routes through systems. Energy routes through systems. Healthcare routes through systems. When everything you need to survive is mediated by institutions, questioning their authority feels terrifying, even when that authority is completely artificial. So people defend it. They rationalize it. They pretend it's necessary, and they call it order. But order built on permission is not moral order. It's administrative control. Strip away the mythology, and what you're left with is simple. A system that only functions because people believe in it, comply with it, and enforce it on each other.
Yep.
No belief, no power.
True.
No compliance, no authority.
True.
That's why legitimacy is guarded so aggressively. That's why obedience is framed as responsibility. That's why fear is dressed up as civic duty. And when belief starts to crack, the system doesn't reflect or apologize. It tightens, it regulates harder, it enforces louder.
Yep.
Because force is the only language it has once consent starts slipping.
True.
So if things feel unstable, brittle, and tense, that is not a mystery. It's more people realizing something they were never supposed to question. They were never owned. They were never granted freedom.
Tell it.
And the authority they were taught to fear was just an agreement. One that only works as long as everyone keeps playing along. And agreements, they're made by people.
Yep.
Which means they can end.
Thank you so much for this, Oreo.
Why the hell is it?
Oreo or Aaron Shale Kiri. He's here. He's a white man on TikTok. He gave us the lowdown on the Constitution of the United States of America, about the old dead men who wrote that Constitution. Wow. And the title he's saying is, and man-made systems have no legitimate authority without express consent. That's the title that he wrote on here in TikTok. And I'm listening to that. And I'm woke. I am woke. I am for people who speak the hard truth. So I'm just sharing. I'm sharing what all I find here and with others to help wake us up. Because, yeah, we're in this system. And we're believing and going to war and fighting each other over this system, this man-made system. I mean, they wrote the Bible too. They sat down and wrote them commandments in the Bible, and now they wrote this Constitution hundreds of years ago, and we are abiding by it when we don't need to. We are free people. I like what he's saying about, when you wake up, when the baby is born, he's free. You don't have any rules to follow. The child or animals, they're born, they're running free in the forest. There's no rules for the animals to run around free. The nature created the animal. We are animals. We're created to run free on this earth. And the natural instincts of us born instinct animals kicks in. And we live by our instincts. Oh my God. I'm woke. I'm so woke at this age of me, but I got to share it with my children and my grandchildren. I got to keep my grandkids and give them critical thinking. That's all I'm doing is sharing to help wake my grandkids and my kids up.
They didn't forget to teach you about money. They chose not to. Because the moment you understand money, you stop being easy to control. Let me tell you why school never taught you about money. I'll oversimplify, but pay attention. There was a time when education prepared people for real life. How to earn, how to save, how to build something of their own. Then something changed. The people who design education realized a dangerous truth. Financially independent people don't obey easily. So they removed the most powerful knowledge from the system, not by accident, by design. They taught you algebra you'll never use, made you memorize the mitochondria, forced you to recite dates of wars you didn't fight. But no one explained compound interest. No one explained credit score. No one explained taxes, leverage, or building assets. Because that knowledge creates options, and people with options are hard to control. They don't need owners, they need workers. They don't need entrepreneurs, they need employees. So the path was laid out for you. Graduate, take on debt, get a job, stay quiet. Repeat for 40 years. Anyone who understands power knows this truth. An educated population is dangerous. So they gave you a degree, but not real-world skills. A certificate, but not financial literacy. Now you're 25, drowning in debt, working paycheck to paycheck, and no one ever told you what a Roth IRA is. That's not because you're stupid. It's because you were miseducated on purpose.
We Muslims do something that the whole world thinks is wrong, and we will never stop. We let our children live with us after marriage. We keep our parents in our home until they die. We eat together every single night. The West calls this unhealthy codependency. Let me tell you what I see in the West. They say your children need to be independent. Their elderly die alone in nursing homes. Their children call once a month in the best case scenario. Their families are strangers, living in different cities, connected by nothing but a group chat. And they want to teach us about family? My sons live with me now in our big house. Their wives, their children, all under one roof. All of my kids work now, but none of them pay rent, bills, utilities, food, and other expenses. So they save and invest the money. When one of my sons buys a Ferrari, they all share it and drive together. My second son owns a supermarket business, so we never buy groceries. And my daughter owns a private daycare. This is how we Muslims live and grow together, and our houses are never empty and never quiet. We Muslims do something that the whole world thinks is wrong.
All right, so now I'm going to work with Africa news and a little bit of history behind some of this Africa type news, okay?
The great Jamaican philosopher-poet Robert Nesta Marley famously said, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." I want to repeat an encouragement that I offered as part of this address, one that is companion to the truth that I began with. When discussing slavery and its resulting institutions and practices, we must always start by reclaiming racial equality, the dignity of Africans, the humanity of our ancestors who were enslaved, and as a matter of course, our own humanity. We must also remember to reclaim our humanity, because when we absorb too much of the language of violence and erasure, we can stop hearing the language of truth that exists within us. When we're in that state of mind, our minds become enslaved. In his book, the Guyanese writer Walter Rodney quotes a Dutch traveler's first impressions upon visiting the Nigerian city of Benin. He says the town's seem very great. When you enter into it, you go into a great broad street. The town is composed of 30 main streets, very straight, 120 feet wide. The houses are close to one another, arranged in very good order. These people are in no way inferior to the Dutch as regards cleanliness. This was his quotation. In 1531, a Portuguese sailor, Vicente Pegado, traveled to the city of Great Zimbabwe, and this was what he wrote. He said, among the gold mines and the inland plains between the Limpopo and Zambezi River is a fortress built of stone of marvelous size, and there appears to be no mortar joining the stones. This edifice is almost surrounded by hills, upon which are others resembling it in the fashioning of stone and the absence of mortar. And one of them is a tower more than 12 fathoms high. A 2016 article in the Guardian newspaper highlighted the city of Great Zimbabwe built between the 11th and 14th century. And the article described a centuries-old drainage system that remained operational, funneling water from the houses and enclosures down into the valley. And the article also disclosed how, in the 19th century, European visitors to this abandoned medieval city in Great Zimbabwe refused to believe that indigenous Africans could have built such an extensive network of monuments. Here's the thing. The greatness that is within us will always outweigh the injustices that have been visited against us. The great Jamaican philosopher-poet Robert Nesta Marley famously said, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." I want to repeat an encouragement that I offered as part of this address, one that is companion to the truth that I began with. When discussing slavery and its resulting institutions and practices, we must always start by reclaiming racial equality, the dignity of Africans, the humanity of our ancestors who were enslaved, and as a matter of course, our own humanity.
That was President John Mahama of Ghana addressing and stating reasons for reparations at the UN. He was giving a speech to the United Nations why our slave experience should never, ever be forgotten, and that we are overdue for reparations, and that, treat us like you treat the Holocaust. You don't never forget the Jews, so you don't forget our slave, you don't excuse and dismiss our experience and the atrocities against the slaves. So thank you, President John Mahama, for addressing and bringing that up to the United Nations. We should never forget our slave trade and all, like, don't forget, the Holocaust.
That's the thing about the world. That's why we are at war. We have no understanding with each other. And it's a sad thing. And not having an understanding because not many people want to be in your place. How many people wish they was black? Or want to go through what black people have gone through, and not just back then, to this day, to this motherfucking day. See, when I talk about it, they say, you can't think about old situations because it brings old feelings back up. So let me calm myself down. Because people don't understand what we as people go through. So when they got a person like me, a modern day Muhammad Ali, to come to the forefront to protect, to provide, and to educate, it becomes a problem because nobody want to go down memory lane or feel the feeling that we have felt for many years and still feel to this motherfucking day. It's a touchy subject because it's not been long. And when I talk about where y'all people went and grabbed our people from our own land, then it's a problem because nobody really understand that. We ain't bothered nobody. We ain't did nothing to no one. But tried to take care of our own, built our own, had our own. But then somebody come along in our land and want to take our land, trick our people, take our people, and kill them too. It's so much. Nobody wants to get in our shoes and feel what we felt for many years, and then they wonder why we so aggressive, why we so passionate about certain, because I only speak from passion. When I get in this rage, it's passion.
I understand.
Because of the history of what's been done. It can't be erased. It would never be forgotten. And some people would never forgive. But at the end of the day, they use Christianity as a weapon. They try to forgive our neighbors, right? But their history will never be erased. Why? That's why most black people don't even know where they come from. Because we had to take the last name of our slave owners. And then you want to look down on us? We did nothing to anyone. And still, oh man. It's a touchy situation. Because we did nothing. Nothing. But show how powerful we were as human beings, and we still powerful. That's why they never want us to come together. They hate to see another brother hug another brother and say, I love you, but I do that. And I'll forever do that. They have to kill me. Now, I don't hate anyone. Hatred is a strong dislike. I don't hate anyone. I love all people, but I love my peoples. You understand me?
Yeah.
Just as any other people should love their people, and we should love all human beings because we are the human race. That's it. To love someone that's free. That's simple to do. You understand me? Until someone do something to you, now you got a reason to hate them, to dislike them, to want to cause harm against them. But if you don't know this person, how can you not like this person or cast stone against this person? Oh, because of the color of their fucking skin? Get out of here, get real, get serious.
I agree with you.
Man, make you want to slap somebody. So I'm gonna sip my tea.
That was boxer Deontae Wilder. The lady was interviewing him, and he was expressing what it feels like to be black in America. Ugh.
Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved. The end result, they mean no good. They can turn around and give us an inventory and say, as long as you've been in Africa, show us your success rate. You claim you're helping governments with education and healthcare. Show us your success rate. Africa has been the provider. If you look at Europe, Europe cannot survive without Africa. One situation that people don't realize, post-World War, when the US came up with the Marshall Plan, what they don't tell you is that the contribution through exploitation of African minerals was actually the biggest funder of the European Recovery Plan, ERP, aka the Marshall Plan. Let's be realistic here. Let's not talk about peanuts. Africa does not need the aid. What we need is for those who are exploiting Africa to stop. Africa has everything it needs. If Africa could have contributed as much as it did to the recovery of Europe post-World War II, why wasn't Africa equally developed? United Nations, it took 4 weeks to create the United Nations. Why? In order to help the recovery of Europe. The World Bank, the IMF, it took 3 weeks to create them after the Second World War in order to aid in the recovery of Europe from its own self-implosion and destruction. So no. These institutions were not created to benefit the developing world. To the contrary, they were built to steal from the developing world. Their success is based on the failures of the developing nations where they have been stealing from.
My guest is Mr. Uchenna Mparu. He's the Chief Investment Officer and Fund Manager, United Capital Infrastructure Fund. Thank you so much. It's good to have you live in the studio, Mr. Uchenna.
TVC News. TVC News.
Considering our infrastructure gap, the deficit that we face as a country, as someone who manages the fund specifically designed to address this gap, I'd like you to describe the state of infrastructure financing in Nigeria today, and why does private capital play a critical role in this?
Very strong question. we know the infrastructure deficit in Nigeria.
Yes.
And that's across power, it's
Yes.
across transportation systems, aviation infrastructure.
Yes.
Even in telecoms, where we've seen a lot of growth, you still find large percentages of the population having limited connectivity. So the infrastructure demand is obvious. The question then is, why? Why should any private capital provider be interested in providing funding towards infrastructure? Simple answer is that the market has changed. Over time, Nigerian government, and when you think infrastructure, you have to think of a strong role of government. Government has taken a number of very good steps. The Electricity Act being one of them.
Yeah.
And amongst other things, one of the things that Act does is to say, you have people who can potentially pay more for electricity than others. And these people who can pay more are premium customers. You can charge them a different tariff, which is attractive for a private investor. So just think about anyone in Band A who is paying a premium is perhaps an attractive person that you want to fund. Now, beyond electricity, there are other spaces. Gas, there's a lot happening there. The Petroleum Industry Act of 2023 was transformational for that space. So before now, you have Nigeria as a country, because a lot of our foreign revenues come from crude oil production. But you'll find that a lot of those producers were flaring gas, and government said that is money that's being wasted. How do we capture that gas, monetize it, and ultimately even export it? So these are the things that are driving a lot of private capital participation, and these are the sectors that we are keen to invest in.
Interesting stuff, because I sometimes I think there was a report where the IMF and World Bank were talking about the kind of investments we will need to bridge our infrastructure gap. I think over the next 10 years, I see specifically power and some other segments. But can you give us more insight into this funds for those that want to understand, and what are the primary motivations behind the establishment?
So you've laid the background. So we had studies done, I think as far back as 2015, that said, over the next 30 years, Nigeria will need an average of $100 billion in investments in infrastructure across the country. So $100 billion every year, which means that any year as a nation, we don't meet up to $100 billion, that effect compounds. So the next year, you have what was the shortfall for the previous year, and then the 100 for this year, and on, which ultimately presented an opportunity. So in 2020, our board took a strategic decision to say, look, we as United Capital have extensive experience raising capital for government and public sector institutions that have been doing infra and infra-related projects. Why don't we put our money where our mouth is, which is one, establish a fund that we will invest in, and then attract other like-minded investors into that fund. So that started that journey. Started in 2020, and we ultimately then launched United Capital Infrastructure Fund in 2021. What did we launch these funds to do? To look into the market, find projects that are very bankable, very attractive, and need the financing, and invest in those projects such that the returns that come from that project is something that ourselves, United Capital, as investors, but also our investing public get the benefit of enjoying from. And since we launched that now, our fund has now gone live. Over the last 4 years, we've invested in power, we've invested in renewable energy, we've invested in industrial recycling. And we see that those investments have been generating very, very attractive returns, very competitive returns, which is why we're able to say, in your introduction, you say we are outperforming comparable instruments. Without a doubt, we are. And that comes to the quality of the investments that the fund has made since inception.
All right, let's take this commercial break, and when we come back, the discussion continues. Stay with us.
Business Nigeria, TVC News.
We've seen different affordable housing projects. We haven't reached anywhere. Many people say that those affordable housing are not even affordable for those who could be classified as middle-income individuals.
I don't argue at all. I have one point in time been thinking about how government can also commit to social housing, even so that we can improve the housing supply. And I'm happy that the president recently meeting the Labour team gave some assurance that there should be some dialogue to see how we can drive home and improve the supply, and that social housing should be something that must be critically looked at. Today, I was part of a meeting that my minister, Honorable Kenneth J, and the ministry is also working hard to make sure we can walk the talk and ensure what the president has even asked for, that there should be housing dialogue for us to think about social housing, which government has in that state alluded the fact that they must work hard to catch up, and that the ministry is also working towards it. And I believe my minister, the ministry will ensure that the president's vision is realized and materialized.
Mr. Fifowari, I mean, you represent a group of people who have had to face the brunt of the system in Ghana in terms of looking for places. What can you tell us about how bad the situation is beyond the numbers of 1.8 million?
Well, so thank you very much, and representing House and let me say National Tenants Union of Ghana. From our perspective, I would say the housing situation is extremely severe and unfair to the ordinary Ghanaian. This is because successive governments have done little about housing and its ways to break the housing deficit. We keep growing as a country, our population keeps growing, but the challenge is that we have not really given much attention to the issue of housing. Meanwhile, housing is actually a human rights issue. You cannot deal with housing without looking at the real challenges that affect people. Day in and day out, currently, we can see that young people are suffering. They are going through so many things. I mean, professionals, nurses and all that. But then the problem has to do with government's foresight in terms of the vision to give affordable housing to the ordinary person. Ghanaian is a challenge currently. And there seems to be no roadmap in achieving that.
Let me get the quick thoughts of Apostle Eric Odame Dako, who is the chairman of the National Landlords Association of Ghana. Apostle, I hope you can hear us this time around. Can you? Hello, Apostle.
Hello.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So I want to find out from you. We've had the president and, of course, government officials coming in telling tenants to report landlords who are charging more than 6 months as against the act which has been there for many years now. If you can first tell us why landlords, I don't know whether you're one of those people who take more than 6 months, why you choose to do that against the laws we have in this country.
Thank you very much. To be honest, I'm not among the landlords that take more money or a lot of money from people.
Okay, what's the evidence? I mean, you're speaking to us on the phone, telling us that you're not among those. So how do you do yours? Hello? It looks like we have a problem to the line of Mr. Odame, Apostle Odame Dako. We'll correct that and get him back on the line. But I want to come back to you, Mr. Fifowari. I mean, we've had the president, like I said, say that now tenants have the rights. I mean, it's been there, but now it looks like we want to implement this. They have the right to report landlords who are charging more than 6 months of rent. And that's really according to Section 25.5 of the Rent Act 220. For you representing individuals who need a place, how realistic is this?
This is a directive that, let me even make it clear, that's legal, just as you know, it's in the law. But then, implementation of such policies or this legal regime is a challenge. And so we welcome it as a very good call from the president, that at least the president has seen the need of addressing the housing issue once and for all. But then it also has to do with so many things. One, we cannot just go and then, report when there are no properly laid down structures.
How do you mean by that?
Oh, in terms of, the rent control, as we know, has no much strength. It lacks so much that it has to be, revamped as an institution. If we are, before you give the tenant the opportunity to be able to, the tenant get opportunity to go in there to report the landlord. There are real issues that we have to deal with as a country. The rent control department, which actually mediates or probably implement the rent laws, they need so much to be able to make it possible. they have structural issues. They have, how do I call it, human resource issues. They have budgetary allocation issue. There are no much to give the confidence to the tenant to be able to go in there. Because of course, if the whole country, the rent control has less than 100 offices, about 50-something offices across the country, and we have over 270 districts across the country, it means they are not so much so that at least the tenant can be able to reach them and then get this solution done. So we are employing that since the government or the president has seen the need of this law, because as a union we have advocated for a very long time. We've pushed that this law be worked on because the ordinary Ghanaian is facing it. But then the whole thing has to do with structures, unavailability of structures that will make the law work. That is what we employed at the president. With the proclamation that he has made, we expect action, investment into the rent control.
Do I hear you say that as it stands now, you do not think that this call, as it were, is realistic to implement immediately?
In fact, it's a call that we have been waiting for a very long time. But then implementation should, it shouldn't be only a call. It must come with resource allocations. It must come with, a systemic, a well-structured system that will accommodate some of these complaints that we are having. But we know the law has existed and it is there. But then implementation cannot be possible if there are no structures.
I'm going to stop right here. It's more to the conversation that I caught about Ghana's rent control and how the landlords is getting away with asking for 6 months deposit in advance, asking for 6 months of rent, monthly rent in advance. And then, the kids, the young adults in Africa that just graduated from high school or they're in their 30s, they can't afford no 6 months up front, and they're running to the banks trying to get a loan to pay rent a year in advance. Give them a whole month's year or a whole month's 6 months. This is the argument. This is why they got this talk show, and this is what I captured, and they're discussing this. And then the man just saying that they don't have enforcement infrastructure systems in place to do the enforcement to penalize these landlords that's asking for this rent up front in advance. It's crazy. And then you heard the last news about Nigeria and their finance. What was they talking about? I just wanted to share the news that we all across the world is got the similar poor people's news. We got the similar crisis and rent control and all that we're going through. We all are suffering some of the same issues here at home in USA, abroad in America, all over across the world. We are all in this pot of together fighting with these systems that they got in place, and is making it hard to live and support our families.
Trump has pocketed at least $1.4 billion. This is all in his first year. This is an astonishing level, unprecedented level of corruption. $23 million in licensing deals for overseas real estate projects, a new hotel in Oman, a new golf course in Saudi Arabia, just to name a couple. $28 million from Amazon for a documentary about Melania Trump. $90 million from various other technology and entertainment companies like X and Paramount in the form of legal settlements. When Trump goes to battle with these corporations, it is leverage and conflict of interest at its worst. Then, of course, there's a $400 million jet from the government of Qatar, which Trump has said he plans to take with him when he leaves office. And then more than $850 million from his crypto coin schemes. People who hope to influence federal policy, including foreigners, can buy his family coins now, effectively transferring money to the Trumps, and the deals are often in secret. And this is just the first year of his second term. He still has 3 more years to go to rack up even more grift off of the American taxpayer. 1 year ago, Donald Trump swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and to serve the American people. But Donald Trump doesn't care about the Constitution. Clearly, Donald Trump is selling you out while he lines his own pockets.
That's his big word, the billionaires, and how the billionaires are doing great while other people are struggling. And the gap between rich and poor in the United States has been growing steadily. This is not something new, but we used to have more of a safety net. This is a global phenomenon. It's not just the United States. These latest figures that have come out about the enormous increase in the wealth of the billionaires in the past year, increasing at 3 to 4 times as faster than it normally does. This is not accidental. You know, this goes back to the start of the Cold War. In 1948, George Kennan wrote a memo that said we have 6.3% of the world population, yet we control 50% of the world's wealth. We can't help but be the object of envy and resentment. The question before us is, how do we maintain this position of disparity? And the United States has tried to do so on a global scale, but also the capitalist class, the most wealthy capitalists, have done so inside the United States. So they're getting richer and richer while most people live paycheck to paycheck. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, one big health bill or one other crisis puts you under. And then you're in a position of dependency and living on charity, basically, which goes against the American sense of what's right and wrong. And the United States still is the wealthiest country. But what we see happening globally is more and more money is being put into militaries, more and more money being put into police, into arms. And Donald Trump is leading that campaign globally. And as Eisenhower said in the 50s, that is every dollar that goes to build guns and fighter planes and bombs is a theft from those who are hungry and need food, a theft from those who are unhoused and need housing, those who are unhealthy and need health care. And we're, as a planetary civilization, as one species, we're going the wrong direction. We have enough wealth that everybody could live decently, but we don't distribute it fairly. And we have a capitalist system in which the wealthy are doing great and the rest of the people are suffering or struggling.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ben, of course, another factor briefly mentioned earlier is the debt. Some say there's a debt-driven culture in the U.S. Debt-driven living has become the foundation of middle-class life in America. People often openly state they live off their credit cards, but at annual interest rates of 20% or more, it's easy to see how normal people become caught in the long-term debt trap. With that in mind, is there anything the government is doing, or the government can do probably, to help people stay safe and let's say above the kill line?
Well, there are many things the government could do in the U.S., but the government has not implemented these policies, and this has been bipartisan for many decades. The government has implemented policies that have served largely financial interests and not the interests of the majority of the population, of poor and working class Americans. And for instance, if you go back and look from World War II until 1963, the top marginal tax rate in the U.S. was 80 to 90%. And ever since then, the richest Americans have had their taxes fall more and more. Trump, in his 2 terms now, has continued to cut taxes on the richest Americans while imposing tariffs, which in fact are a tax, and it's a regressive tax that hurts primarily poor and working class Americans who rely much more, they spend much more of their paycheck on imported consumer goods. So we see that the policies of the US government are actually putting more of a burden on the poor and working class population and less of a burden on the richest people in the country, which is why we see so much extreme inequality. And there's a lot of support for some of these measures that across the population, regardless of party affiliation, for increasing taxes on the richest population and providing a larger social safety net. But these measures are opposed by the wealthiest interest in the country. Just a quick example is California right now is trying to propose a measure that would implement a 5% one-time wealth tax on billionaires. And we see that billionaires are spending tens of millions of dollars lobbying against this measure because they know that this would be a sign to other states in the country that they could also implement similar measures that try to reduce this inequality. So anytime even local governments do try to implement some kind of measure, they face very heated opposition, because it's very difficult to actually challenge the power of money in politics when we see through things like the Citizens United ruling by the Supreme Court. There's no limit on the power of money in US politics.
Right, money in politics. With that, we come to the end for today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qianduo. Thanks for being
by £500. The Chancellor's very narrow plan simply won't cut it. And while I don't fall for the crocodile tears of the leader of the Conservatives, who cheered on this illegal war without a thought for the impact on people's energy bills. And the government is right to reject repeating Liz Truss's blanket cheque approach. But, Mr. Speaker, the government can't ignore the millions of families who don't get benefits, who already face a cost of living crisis. So can the Prime Minister at least guarantee to all those families and pensioners that he won't let their energy bills go up by £500 this year?
Well, let me say my verdict. He's right about the Leader of the Opposition wanting to join the war, and she's wrong about that. At least he's read the legislation that I've been challenged on. It does help. It does help. At least he's right. It was the leader of their party that said, let's all go to war without thinking through the consequences. We're now discussing the consequences. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the support, we've made clear the principles the approach will take. We'll keep this under careful review. Energy bills for households are frozen until are capped until the end of June. It's really important I make clear that that's whatever happens in the conflict, because I know the public are concerned about that. We will then put in place appropriate support and look at how we put the principles behind it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks on the terrible Golders Green attacks? Mr. Speaker, rebuilding trust and integrity in our democracy matters deeply to my constituents in Southampton. Shamefully, it doesn't matter at all to some, particularly the senior Reform UK politician who has been convicted of taking bribes from Russia. Does the Prime Minister agree that there has never been a more urgent need to defend our country from hostile forces who would try to undermine our democracy? And will he set out what concrete steps he is taking to crack down on foreign interference in British politics?
I thank my honourable friend. He makes a powerful point. Mr. Speaker, the Communities Secretary will make a statement later on the Rycroft review, which sets out the stark threats posed by illicit finance. I can tell the House we will act decisively to protect our democracy. That would include a moratorium on all political donations made through cryptocurrencies. I hope that will be welcomed across the House. There is only one party leader has shown he will say anything, no matter how divisive, if he's paid to do so.
Nigel Farage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Smash the gangs. That is what the Prime Minister promised us. Trust me, I will stop the votes from coming. But 70,000 later, and 1,000 in the last week, and too many young men that pose a threat to national security. Is it not time to admit Smash the Gangs has been a total abject failure, along, frankly, with most of his other policies? Isn't it now time, he told us, as summer approaches, what is Plan B?
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is from the man of the party that voted against giving law enforcement counter-terrorism style powers to tackle it. So he wants the grievance, he doesn't want it sorted. And he has absolutely no judgment. He again said, let's join the war, let's all go to war. I want to make it perfectly clear he wants the war. A week later, screeching U-turn, we don't want to go to war. And he says, trust his judgment. Mr. Speaker, it's hard to take anything he says seriously. He promised lower tax, and now Reform councils are hiking council tax by 9%. In Worcestershire, This is what he said about Worcestershire. He said, we took control of a virtually bankrupt council. I wish we hadn't bothered. He asks for people's votes and then he abandons them. Reform don't want to solve problems, they only want to exploit them. I am thankful for the opportunity to change this country for the better. He says he wish he hadn't bothered winning councils, because they're an absolute disgrace.
Okay, that was the UK Parliament that I was sharing. Their arguments with the Prime Minister and their issues is the same. You know, everybody's complaining about the same thing. Living wage, taxes, the same thing. All right, so now let's get to, I never did get to my China news from my channel station. I wanted to share a Chinese 5-year plan.
Convene a total of some 5,000 political advisors and legislative deputies will discuss national priorities, including the draft outline of the new 5-year plan. Let's take a closer look.
China's top political advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or CPPCC National Committee, opened its annual session on Wednesday in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping, together with other leaders, attended the opening meeting of the 4th session of the 14th CPPCC National Committee at the Great Hall of the People. Wang Huning, chairman of the CPPCC National Committee, delivered a work report on behalf of the Standing Committee of the CPPCC National Committee. In the report, Wang said 2025 was a year of major significance in advancing Chinese modernization.
The year 2025 was a crucial year for advancing Chinese modernization. In the face of a complicated international landscape and the challenging domestic task of advancing reform, the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, has united entire party and Chinese people of all ethnic groups and led them in meeting difficulties head-on, forging ahead with determination. They kept in mind both international and domestic imperatives. As a result, the main economic and social development targets for the year were accomplished. China's economy continues to embrace innovations and excellency despite challenges, achieving new outcomes in fostering new quality productive forces, and new strides were made in reform and opening up. People's livelihoods were further safeguarded, social stability was maintained, the 14th 5-year plan was successfully concluded. China's economic strength, scientific and technological capabilities, national defense capabilities, and composite national strength rose to a new height, and solid new strides were made in advancing Chinese modernization.
Wang also reviewed the CPPCC's work over the past year. He said the advisory body followed Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, upheld the leadership of the Communist Party of China, and focused on serving the country's central tasks through consultation and policy advice. Looking ahead, Wang said 2026 marks the first year of the 15th 5-year plan period. The CPPCC will continue to focus on major national priorities, strengthen political guidance, and help build consensus across society to support China's development goals.
Efforts should also focus on key issues in areas such as economic development, scientific and technological innovation, reform and opening up, social development, and people's well-being, and truthfully reflect public opinion and social conditions. The positioning of consolidated supervision should be firmly grasped. The democratic supervision work plan of the CPPCC for the 15th 5-year plan period should be effectively implemented, and support should be provided to ensure the full implementation of major policy decisions and arrangements made by the CPC Central Committee.
At the meeting, another report on proposal handling was also presented. The report said since the previous annual session, 5,992 proposals have been submitted by political advisors. 5,061 proposals were filed, and 99.9% have already been processed. Officials from central government departments attended the meeting as invited participants. Foreign diplomats in China and representatives of overseas Chinese were also invited to observe the opening session.
The 14th National People's Congress also briefed the public on key issues and policy indicators that may ripple across the globe. Fang Yilei has that part of the story.
Ready for its fourth session starting Thursday. Deliberation on China's social and economic plan for the next half-decade sits high on the agenda. It's not just about numbers or growth targets, but about growth quality, as China doubles down on future industries and a 1.4 billion strong market.
During the 15th five-year plan period, we will boost basic and core technological innovation, integrate sci-tech and industrial innovation, and achieve decisive breakthroughs in key technologies. We will work with all parties to build an open, fair, equitable, and non-discriminatory global sci-tech environment so that innovation benefits more countries and peoples. This year, we will expand domestic demand and boost consumption to build a strong domestic market. We will upgrade consumption, improve the international environment, and host the Buy in China campaign while linking people's well-being with consumption.
The top legislature is positioning its legislative agenda as a guarantee. National legislators will review the National Development Planning Law to cement long-term strategic goals during the two sessions. New legislation in healthcare and childcare is also on the table throughout the year, with the aim to turn Social Security into a catalyst for consumption. Meanwhile, China remains wide open for foreign businesses and investors and vows to expand institutional opening up and defend multilateral trade and deepen Belt and Road cooperation in the next 5 years to grow the global pie and sharing opportunities guaranteed by a more transparent legal framework.
China stands ready to strengthen communication with the U.S. at all levels to expand bilateral cooperation while firmly safeguarding its sovereignty, security, and development interests. We will work with Europe to uphold our partnership, properly handle economic and trade differences, expand cooperation, and jointly address global challenges. Guided by the Central Conference on Work related to neighboring countries, we will build a community with a shared future with neighboring countries, following the principles of amity, sincerity, mutual benefit, and inclusiveness to jointly create a peaceful, prosperous, and friendly home.
And despite external headwinds, China has reaffirmed its stance to immediate halt to military action. It wants a return to dialogue to prevent further escalation in safeguarding the Middle East stability.
No country has the right to control international affairs, dictate the fate of others, or monopolize development advantages, still less to act as it pleases on the world stage. As a major country and permanent member of the UN Security Council, China stands ready to work with all nations to firmly safeguard the authority and standing of the United Nations, uphold the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, and practice true multilateralism, contributing further to reforming and improving global governance and building a community with a shared future for humanity.
Against the backdrop of the escalating regional flashpoints and a volatile global trade environment, observers here appear to be eager to see one thing above all else from the sessions over the coming week: certainty. And China is trying to prove that its roadmap is not merely to solidify a foundation for socialist modernization by 2035, but also intended to be a reliable engine for the world through the geopolitical storm. For CBTN, Beijing.
So what do policy decisions of this year's two sessions mean for the rest of the world? Costa Rica's former president shared her take with my colleague Anna Knighton.
Of course, it is going to be a very positive, very positive to hear about the kind of domestic measures that China will emphasize during those meetings, like the ones you already mentioned about incentivizing innovation policies to boost economic growth, and its commitment with strengthening the clean energy sector. We need to recognize that China is currently recognized or is considered as one of the global leaders in terms of technological development in general, and especially in green technologies. But in addition, we will love to hear about China commitments in supporting through bilateral cooperation and also through the multilateral system with other countries, the less developed countries, in promoting their commitment with clean energies and a innovation-based development patterns.
And you can watch the Heat weeknights, 6 p.m. Eastern here in the U.S., Tuesday through Saturday, 7 a.m. in Beijing.
Because of the interest in China, just to my surprise, but to my happiness. And this last summer, we sent more Harvard students to China than we have in memory, even before COVID. Somewhere between 300 and 400 Harvard students went to China. We have a large internship program with Chinese companies and NGOs. We started a new summer school taught by Harvard faculty in Shanghai with Fudan University. We had maybe 180 Harvard undergraduates go to China to teach in high schools in China. We have a new language program in Taipei. We are expanding significantly what we're doing in China because we believe that for the long-term future of our own university, that this is really important. And the students, there are many more applicants for any of these positions by the students than we have places.
Great, I'm really happy to hear that. That's really encouraging. And shall I add, you don't have to go to Harvard to come to China. You don't have to go to university to come to China either. You can just hop on a plane, make a transit. The visa is much simpler nowadays. So thank you so much, Professor William Kirby. I won't hold you longer. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been my great pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's it for this special edition of The Point with me, Mixin, coming to you from Beijing. As usual, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Mixin in Beijing.
All right, so you heard my China news. Now let's give you a little bit of this update on this war, which is old news. I'm bringing back some old news that is still relevant today about this war, this Iran war, this illegal war. Let's take a listen on what I captured.
The so-called leader of the free world just got locked out of Europe's airspace. France said no, Italy said no, Spain said no, Switzerland said no. In the span of 48 hours, 4 major Western nations looked at the United States of America and said, "We don't want any part of what you're doing. You're on your own, Donald." Let that satisfaction sink in for a second. The country that built NATO, the country that has projected military power across the globe for 7 decades, just got told by its own allies that it can't fly its planes over their countries. That is not a minor diplomatic spat. That is not a little disagreement between friends. That is the sound of the post-World War II international order cracking in half, right in front of our eyes. And I need you to understand something before we go any further here. This didn't happen because these countries suddenly hate America. This didn't happen because the French woke up one morning and decided they wanted to pick a fight. This happened because Donald Trump, the man sitting in the Oval Office, has spent his time in power systematically destroying every single relationship the United States has built over generations. He threatened NATO. He attacked allies. He cozied up to dictators. He launched a war in Iran without consulting anyone. And now he's shocked that nobody wants to help him. I mean, how dumb do you have to be? Look, let's walk through this piece by piece, because the details here are staggering when you actually lay them all out on the table. So here's what happened. France and Italy officially joined Spain and Switzerland in denying the United States any military support or airspace for Trump's war in Iran. And it's not just the US that got shut out. Israel wanted to use French airspace to transport American weapons that were going to be used in the Iran conflict. And France said, absolutely not. France flat out refused. And Italy? Italy told the United States that if they want to use Italian military infrastructure for purposes outside of existing agreements, they need special permission. And guess what? Trump's Iran war doesn't fall under any existing agreement. So the answer from Italy was no. You don't get to use our country as a pit stop for your unauthorized military adventure. Now think about that for a second. These are NATO allies. These are countries that have stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States through the Cold War, through the Balkans, through Afghanistan, through countless military operations over decades. And in the span of a few months, Donald Trump has managed to alienate them so completely, so thoroughly, that they won't even let American planes fly over their territory. That's not just a policy disagreement, that's a full-blown divorce. And what was Trump's response to all of this? Did he reflect? Did he pause and think, maybe I should have talked to my allies before launching a major military operation in the Middle East? No, of course not. This is Donald Trump we're talking about. He went on the attack. He accused France of blocking military equipment. He attacked France and the United Kingdom throughout the day. He basically threw a tantrum like a child who got told he can't have dessert and then flipped the table over. And then, and this is the part that should make every American sit up straight in their chair, Trump said the United States should consider withdrawing from NATO. Let me say that again so it really lands. The President of the United States suggested that America should pull out of the military alliance that has been the backbone of Western security since 1949. An alliance that was specifically created to prevent the kind of catastrophic global conflicts that killed tens of millions of people in the first half of the 20th century. Trump wants to throw that in the garbage because France wouldn't let his planes fly over their country for a war he started without asking anyone. And it wasn't just Trump. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, went on Fox News and echoed the exact same thing. And I want to break down what Rubio said because the framing he used is so dishonest, so manipulative that it deserves to be pulled apart word by word. Rubio said, and I'm paraphrasing the substance here, that he used to be one of the strongest defenders of NATO in the Senate because he saw value in it. He said NATO wasn't just about defending Europe, it was about having military bases in Europe that allowed the US to project power around the world. But now, he said, if NATO means we can't use those bases when we need them, then what's the point? Then it's a one-way street. Then we're just there to defend Europe, but when we need help, they say no. Here's the reality of what Rubio just did there. He reframed the entire situation to make it sound like America is the victim, like America has been this generous benefactor, just giving and giving and giving to ungrateful Europeans who won't return the favor. But that is a complete distortion of what's actually happening. The reason these countries are refusing to cooperate isn't because they don't value the alliance. It's because Donald Trump launched an unlawful war, a war that none of these countries were consulted about, a war that none of them agreed to, a war that violates international norms. And then he showed up at their door demanding they participate. That's not how alliances work. That's not how partnerships work. You don't ignore your partners, go rogue, start a fire, and then get mad when they won't help you put it out. And let's talk about what Rubio said regarding the Strait of Hormuz, because this was equally disturbing. Rubio basically said, the Strait of Hormuz is international waters, and what Iran is doing there is illegal under maritime law. But then he said, it's not really America's problem. The US doesn't get much energy through the strait. It's Europe's problem. It's Asia's problem. Let them deal with it. The United States of America, the so-called leader of the free world, just got locked out of Europe's airspace.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Poor people's news, poor people news. Let me share this that I got off of TikTok. But first, let me read that I got from Google about Canada. Come on now. It says the Canadian federal government does not directly own the primary east-west freight rail infrastructure. Instead, it regulates, while private corporations like Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City own the vast majority of tracks, including the major coast-to-coast cargo corridors. Okay, so I asked AI on this Google. I Googled and asked that question, what about Canada's ownership with the railroad? And that's what they came back with. Let me finish reading this Google saying, freight railroad ownership, CN is privatized in 1995, and CP Kansas City privately owned on over 75. They own over 75% of Canadian tracks, including the vital east-west links. Okay. Now the government role is saying, this is Google. You can Google it. Canadian Rail. Government role. Transport Canada. That's Transport Canada regulates interprovincial railways, but does not own the commercial tracks. Okay, so that's Transport Canada. They regulate it. Then they got the passenger rail. VIA Rail Canada is a federal crown corporation, provides passenger service, but primarily operates on trackage owned by CN or CPKC. Okay, Canada, Kansas City. Exception, the federal government owns some specific smaller or specialized lines such as the Hudson Bay Railway, but that's it. So historically, I'm going to finish reading, the government was heavily involved in creating these networks, such as with the Canadian Pacific Railway Charter back in 1881, but the ownership was transferred to private companies out of Canada to operate the national networks. All right, so now you heard what I read off of the Google AI. Now let you hear.
So the United States just asked Canada for a $573 billion railway bailout. Not offered one, asked for one. The most powerful economy in the history of the world. The nation that has spent 2 years imposing tariffs, trade restrictions, sovereignty violations, and sustained economic coercion on its closest ally, just ask that ally to please restore the freight rail service that American industry depends on to function. Because the North American railway system, it turns out, is Canadian. The trains are Canadian. The tracks are Canadian. The logistics networks that scheduled the movement of American grain, American auto parts, American crude oil, American chemicals, American lumber, and American consumer goods are headquartered in Montreal and Calgary, 2 of the 7 Class I railroads in North America, Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City, are Canadian-owned, Canadian-operated companies that run extensive networks inside the United States on American soil, carrying American freight, connecting American cities. And when Canada redirected its trade away from the United States toward global markets, the railways followed the trade. The trains that used to run south to Chicago and Detroit and Memphis are running east to Halifax and Montreal and west to Vancouver and Prince Rupert, because that's where the demand is now. And American factories can't get parts. American farmers can't ship grain. American refineries can't receive crude. American retailers can't stock shelves. And the estimated cost of the disruption, the backed up freight, the idle production, the rotting grain, the cascading inefficiency spreading through every sector of the American economy is $573 billion over 3 years. And Canada said no. Not just no. Canada announced a $30 billion east-west rail corridor expansion, a massive infrastructure investment that permanently redirects Canadian freight capacity toward global export ports and away from the American border. The bailout was refused. The infrastructure that would have served American industry is being built in a different direction, and every dollar of concrete poured on the east-west corridor is $1 of capacity that will never return to north-south service. Warren Buffett, who owns BNSF Railway, one of the largest freight carriers in North America, and who has spent 60 years studying the economics of moving goods by rail, said this is the most predictable infrastructure crisis in American history. And then he explained with the authority of someone who doesn't just study railways but owns one, why you cannot wage economic war on the country that owns your rail network and expect the trains to run on time, and why asking for a bailout from the nation you've been coercing isn't a negotiation strategy. It's a confession. But the line that is being called the most humiliating sentence ever directed at an American president by an Allied leader, the line Carney delivered when asked whether Canada would consider Trump's railway stabilization proposal, is 9 words that told the United States something no ally has ever had the leverage or the reason to say you don't get to break it, and then ask us to fix it. When you understand how the North American railway system actually works, and who owns it, how the trade war cascaded into a rail logistics collapse that nobody in Washington modeled, what $573 billion of damage looks like on the ground across every major American industry, why Trump asked for a bailout, and what the request reveals what Canada's building instead of restoring service, what Buffett said about the most basic law of transportation economics, and why American farmers and factory workers in swing states are the ones paying the price. You'll understand why this isn't a logistics disruption. It's the moment the most powerful economy on earth discovered it can't move its own goods. Hit subscribe because this railway crisis is about to hit American grocery prices, American factory output, and American farm income simultaneously, and every fix goes through Ottawa. To understand how the most powerful economy on earth ended up asking its neighbor for a railway bailout, you have to understand something that almost nobody, including apparently the people who designed the trade war, knew about how goods actually move in North America. The North American freight railway system is not 3 separate national networks that happen to connect at border crossings. It is a single integrated continental system designed over a century and a half to move goods across the continent with maximum efficiency and minimum friction. The US-Canada border is not a dividing line in the system. It is a seam invisible and normal operation, seamless in practice, and so thoroughly integrated into the logistics architecture of both nations that most people forgot it was there, including the people who decided to tear it. The revelation that stuns most Americans when they encounter it, and that reportedly stunned the President of the United States when it was explained to him in a briefing, is who owns the system. Canadian National Railway, headquartered in Montreal, operates a rail network that stretches from the Canadian Atlantic coast to the Gulf of Mexico. Its American operations span Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and Tennessee. CN doesn't just carry Canadian. So the United States just asked Canada for a 573.
Wow. All right. See, you poor people, get ready. Hunker down. Stop shopping. Get as much canned goods and backpack your food. Because I'm telling you now, these people in the White House were ignorant. Very dumb, ignorant. Didn't do their research. Running around trying to be a bully and don't know what they're doing. I'm sick of it. My kids need to, terrible. This terrible news here. Sorry, poor people. Have to be the bearer of share this bad news. But y'all, it's good that I'm sharing it because you need to start preparing now. Prepare now for your family's sake. This is ridiculous. Prepare now. Oh my God. Poor people's news. Let me share this that I got off of TikTok. But first, let me read that I got from Google about Canada. Come on now. It says the Canadian federal government does not directly own the primary east-west freight rail infrastructure. Instead, it regulates, while private corporations like Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City own the vast majority of tracks, including the major coast-to-coast cargo corridors. Okay, so I asked AI on this Google. I Googled and asked that question, what about Canada's ownership with the railroad? And that's what they came back with. Let me finish reading this Google saying, freight railroad ownership, CN is privatized in 1995, and CP Kansas City privately owned over 75% of Canadian tracks, including the vital east-west links. Okay, Now the government role is saying, this is Google, you can Google it, Canadian Rail. Government role, Transport Canada. That's Transport Canada regulates interprovincial railways, but does not own the commercial tracks. Okay, so that's Transport Canada. They regulate it. Then they got the passenger rail. VIA Rail Canada is a federal crown corporation, provides passenger service, but primarily operates on trackage owned by CN or CPKC. Okay, Canada, Kansas City. Exception, the federal government owns some specific smaller or specialized lines such as the Hudson Bay Railway, but that's it. So historically, I'm going to finish reading, the government was heavily involved in creating these networks, such as with the Canadian Pacific Railway Charter back in 1881, but the ownership was transferred to private companies out of Canada to operate the national networks. All right, so now you heard what I read off of the Google AI. Now let's hear. Let me let you hear.
So the United States just asked Canada for a $573 billion railway bailout. Not offered one, asked for one. The most powerful economy in the history of the world. The nation that has spent 2 years imposing tariffs, trade restrictions, sovereignty violations, and sustained economic coercion on its closest ally, just ask that ally to please restore the freight rail service that American industry depends on to function. Because the North American railway system, it turns out, is Canadian. The trains are Canadian. The tracks are Canadian. The logistics networks that scheduled the movement of American grain, American auto parts, American crude oil, American chemicals, American lumber, and American consumer goods are headquartered in Montreal and Calgary, 2 of the 7 Class I railroads in North America, Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City, are Canadian-owned, Canadian-operated companies that run extensive networks inside the United States on American soil, carrying American freight, connecting American cities. And when Canada redirected its trade away from the United States toward global markets, the railways followed the trade. The trains that used to run south to Chicago and Detroit and Memphis are running east to Halifax and Montreal and west to Vancouver and Prince Rupert, because that's where the demand is now. And American factories can't get parts. American farmers can't ship grain. American refineries can't receive crude. American retailers can't stock shelves. And the estimated cost of the disruption, the backed up freight, the idle production, the rotting grain, the cascading inefficiency spreading through every sector of the American economy is $573 billion over 3 years. And Canada said no. Not just no. Canada announced a $30 billion east-west rail corridor expansion, a massive infrastructure investment that permanently redirects Canadian freight capacity toward global export ports and away from the American border. The bailout was refused. The infrastructure that would have served American industry is being built in a different direction, and every dollar of concrete poured on the east-west corridor is a dollar of capacity that will never return to north-south service. Warren Buffett, who owns BNSF Railway, one of the largest freight carriers in North America, and who has spent 60 years studying the economics of moving goods by rail, said this is the most predictable infrastructure crisis in American history. And then he explained with the authority of someone who doesn't just study railways but owns one, why you cannot wage economic war on the country that owns your rail network and expect the trains to run on time, and why asking for a bailout from the nation you've been coercing isn't a negotiation strategy. It's a confession. But the line that is being called the most humiliating sentence ever directed at an American president by an allied leader, the line Carney delivered when asked whether Canada would consider Trump's railway stabilization proposal, is 9 words that told the United States something no ally has ever had the leverage or the reason to say you don't get to break it, and then ask us to fix it. When you understand how the North American railway system actually works, and who owns it, how the trade war cascaded into a rail logistics collapse that nobody in Washington modeled, what $573 billion of damage looks like on the ground across every major American industry, why Trump asked for a bailout, and what the request reveals what Canada's building instead of restoring service, what Buffett said about the most basic law of transportation economics, and why American farmers and factory workers in swing states are the ones paying the price. You'll understand why this isn't a logistics disruption. It's the moment the most powerful economy on earth discovered it can't move its own goods. Hit subscribe because this railway crisis is about to hit American grocery prices, American factory output, and American farm income simultaneously, and every fix goes through Ottawa. To understand how the most powerful economy on earth ended up asking its neighbor for a railway bailout, you have to understand something that almost nobody, including apparently the people who designed the trade war, knew about how goods actually move in North America. The North American freight railway system is not three separate national networks that happen to connect at border crossings. It is a single integrated continental system designed over a century and a half to move goods across the continent with maximum efficiency and minimum friction. The US-Canada border is not a dividing line in the system. It is a seam invisible and normal operation, seamless in practice, and so thoroughly integrated into the logistics architecture of both nations that most people forgot it was there, including the people who decided to tear it. The revelation that stuns most Americans when they encounter it, and that reportedly stunned the President of the United States when it was explained to him in a briefing, is who owns the system. Canadian National Railway, headquartered in Montreal, operates a rail network that stretches from the Canadian Atlantic coast to the Gulf of Mexico. Its American operations span Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and Tennessee.
All right. Shame. It's so embarrassing. Do the Trump administration, how dumb or smart are they? Oh my God. Well, this is my Poor People's News, and you can come back next Tuesday for some more Poor People News clips that I've captured. But let me remind you about my Topic Tuesday that me and my brothers do for couples relationship. Couples relationships is subscription only. So you'll catch it on an Apple podcast subscription. And you can check out some of my me and my old school brothers. We give advice. Let me share some Topic Tuesdays for couples. Do long distance relationships really work? Or you missed the one called Check Your Baggage. Or you missed another one called Do Women and Men Date Their Friends' Ex? Or you missed another one on how not to mess up your relationship from Keith Sweat's book. And there's another one called What is a Sex Recession? Are we going through a sex recession because we're separated and we all got our me, my brand? Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? You missed that one. A lot of subscription. That's the Topic Tuesday subscriptions that you've missing. For my couples relationship. There's another one called Here's a Man's Idea. Hear a Man's Idea of a Good Woman. What's a man's idea of a good woman? And men who refuse to raise another man's child. Relationship control, the give and the take. Here's another one. Whose team are you on? And then there's another one. Power struggles with couples. Then there's another one called Blended Family. So you're missing some of these couples relationship that's on the Apple subscription only. Come back next Tuesday and take a listen to those couple relationship topics, Topic Tuesdays. All righty, and come back again next Tuesday. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to my Old School Queenies Couples Podcast.